So to tell us about the young Catholics living their faith, please welcome the Chief Operating Officer of Young Catholic Professionals, Mr. Peter Blute. Peter.
Thank you very much, Richard and Don and Greg and the team, for inviting me to be with you this morning. First, let me just say how grateful I am for your mission. As a young person in my 30s, you have an extraordinary vision for what you all do here at Serra and what your clubs foster in cities across the country and even the world. And so I look forward to finding ways that YCP and Serra can work together more fully. And through my presentation today, I think you'll see some of the direct connections, both kind of at an organizational level, how we run and how Serra runs, and just how we can invest in young people to be that next generation, many of them we hope, who can be priests. So this morning I want to talk about one of our deepest desires and really how we as faithful Catholics can play an important role to help all people, but especially young people, to fulfill that desire. And that desire that I'm talking about is the desire to belong, to feel that we belong somewhere. And as I was preparing for this presentation, one of the things I went back to is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Anyone even cursory level familiar, right? You see the pyramid and it builds on itself. So this is actually the third level after food, shelter, and safety is community and belonging. So this must be really important, right? And YCP is investing heavily in how we can help young people belong more, which is part of what I'm going to share with you here today. I do want to start a little bit with my story, because I think my story as a young person, younger at least, highlights the experience that a lot of young people are having today and may give you some insights, and it'll kind of lay a foundation for our conversation today. So I just want to kind of go through each of these stages. I've depicted them with a picture. I'm way oversimplifying this for time, but just go through left to right here. I was born and raised in Texas. I'm the oldest of 6 siblings, Catholic family. We went to Mass every Sunday. My mother especially was a strong influence on my faith growing up. And I went to the University of Dallas right here in town. I'm sure many, if not all of you, are familiar with them as one of the premier Catholic institutions here in the United States, a wonderful, wonderful school. My first half of that college experience was very engaged in my faith. And I depicted that here. This is actually me on my study abroad semester in Venice with my friends. But being in Italy for a semester, being at the center of our faith and getting to experience that. The campus is based in Rome, some of you might know. And so getting to experience my faith coming to life at the center of our faith in the Vatican was an extraordinary experience for me. That was as a sophomore in college. Fast forward to the second half of my college experience, my faith started to take a little bit of a dive. It became secondary. Frankly, I didn't know what my faith was going to be for me as an adult. And there was this transition moment where I was no longer experiencing the faith through my family, through my parents. I had to decide what it was going to be for me. And I don't know if I took longer than most. I certainly took a long time to figure that out. Everyone's on their own journey, right? But that sort of dip in my faith life, that lack of commitment, started towards the end of college. Moving on, I had a chance to then go back to Italy and work for 2 years for that same campus. So I was a full-time employee of the university, living in Rome. And this picture here, I'm a sailor, so this is a particular love of mine in a moment where I was happy, but I can tell you it was probably the rock bottom of my faith life. I had almost completely left my faith behind. I was living in Rome. I was working for this university. I was somewhat trying. I had desires, but I had no idea how to actually do that well. What it meant to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, what a prayer life meant. I was going through the motions largely. And so you see this sort of dip down. Fast forward to moving back to Dallas after that experience. This is where I first encountered young Catholic professionals, or YCP as we call it. I'm pictured here with YCP's founder, Jennifer Baugh. Some of you may actually have met her in different places along the way. She founded YCP about 11 years ago right here in Dallas. And so I stumbled into YCP looking for friendships. I was lonely. I was probably suffering some amount of depression, uncertainty, kind of a drift, a listlessness. I really didn't have direction and where I was going and what my faith life was going to do. I came to YCP and it's totally changed my life. And here I am now 9 years later, working at the headquarters for this amazing group as it's continued to grow from coast to coast. It was a transformative moment in my life because it gave me a community of belonging that then was able to kind of provide the formation and the guidance and the encouragement that I needed to help figure out what my faith was going to be, my relationship with my God was going to be. I married my wife 4 years ago. We just celebrated our 4th anniversary. We were able to do our honeymoon in Rome. You can see I love Italy, right? Clearly there's a trend here. We were able to meet the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and just have that experience together as we started to build our family of faith. And my beautiful daughters, Cecilia and Noelle, now, what is she, 2.5 and almost 1. So, we're in the thick of it right now. You guys probably remember what that's like. But we have this opportunity now to start building a foundation of faith for our family, right? And it's fun. It's exciting to me. It's something that my wife and I have really committed to. And it's because of the foundation that's been laid before that, the people I've met that have encouraged me, that have challenged me, and who ultimately have taught me in so many ways how I can build a family of faith, or at least do the best that we can with what we've been given. And here I am at the end with my YCP team. We have 11 staff members now managing this national entity as it's continued to grow. They're some of my closest friends. They're wonderful, wonderful people who inspire me daily with their faith and their commitment to our church. I share this just to show that there's this arc in my life that obviously is centered on Italy and Rome, the center of our faith. As I look backwards, you start to connect these dots. But that the driving force for me to return to the faith was through people and through community and through an ability to find a place that I could make friends who cared about their faith. They did not have it figured out, but they cared deeply about trying to figure it out and using the resources and the people that they knew to better understand their faith. So moving forward here, I would posit to you that now more than ever, pulling from your theme, young Catholics need a community where they belong. Okay, so I'm going to break this down a little bit piece by piece. We're going to go through this sentence. But first, I want to talk about directly, why am I talking to Serrans about this? Right? It's a great idea, it's a great concept, but why should you today care deeply about this? There's at least a couple of reasons. You can probably come up with more. You know that investing in holy Catholic families means investing in spouses who are going to care deeply about their faith, know their faith, and be ready to share it with their children. Somewhat like I am attempting to do with my wife and my family. You know that will likely lead to more priestly vocations, right? So yes, we have a commitment to priests today, absolutely necessary, and the priests that are coming right after them. But what about the young people like me and the 20-somethings below me who we can start investing in now, who 10, 15, what would that be, 30 years later maybe, will end up having kids that are of the age to become priests and enter the seminary? We can invest in those people today, and we don't have to wait. We don't have to wonder where the next generation is coming from. We can start today. The concepts of belonging that I'll share over the next few minutes, they transcend YCP, right? This is a central focus for us at YCP, and we focus on young Catholics. But these could be equally applied to your Serra clubs. So more from an organizational perspective, bringing in new people into your mission, I think you could also put that hat on and think about why you belong to Serra and how you can get others to feel they belong at Serra to invest in this wonderful, wonderful mission. So let's start with the now more than ever piece, okay? Two trends here that I want to talk about, there's clearly been a decline in the number and the quality of friendships in America in the past 3 decades. So we're talking about 1990 to 2021 here loosely. And there's a variety of reasons for this, right? There's a lot of social isolation defined by my generation, millennials, and the ones behind us, Gen Z, marrying much later. We're more geographically mobile. We're working longer hours. We're traveling more for work. And all of this can come at the cost of maintaining strong relationships. So there was a recent study, the American Perspective study on the state of friendships in America, and that's where these 2 statistics come from. So first here, the percent of Americans with no close friends has gone from 3% to 12%. That's a 4-fold increase in 30 years. This is an immense jump in people with no connections, no one to rely on. This is staggering when I saw this. And then we've got down here the percent of Americans with only one best friend. That has dropped from 75% down to 59% in that same 3 decades or so. These are really staggering statistics when it comes to things like our emotional health, our psychological health. Young people are more disconnected today than any generation before, and things like COVID have only sped up this process that was going to be inevitable. They're often not living near family. They often have little or no faith. They often have a lack of purpose or direction, much like my story that I shared. They're being pulled in so many directions at once. The culture, the work, economic factors, lack of close relationships to rely on, et cetera, et cetera. In the past couple of years, there was a large shift in the work environment, largely due to COVID. Everyone working outside the office, this remote work that Father was just talking about, people moving all over the country. You can work from anywhere where you have a laptop. We know there's a feeling of disconnectedness that comes with being transient and not having a place to really put our roots down. This is one of the areas YCP's growing network of chapters has helped by giving young workers a place that they can plug in, increasingly, wherever they go here in the United States. YCP, and I would posit Serra, can be places of familiarity, places that people can plug into a strong foundation, even when other things in life are changing. Now, the reasons I've shared don't take into account lots of other factors. We don't have time to talk about what's going on in the economy, the political sphere, cultural changes. It's way too much for us to tackle right now. Now, I want to address the fact that this all sounds pretty bleak, right? Why am I leading off with these horrible statistics, right? I would tell you that at YCP, and I hope you as well, see this as an immense opportunity that we have been given. We can help young people to meet, to develop both a local and a wider national community with meaningful relationships, and we can help give them the resources to live a strong Catholic life and community with others. So let's move on to that next part here, young Catholics. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So at YCP, we're working to specifically address the needs of 20 and 30-somethings across all industries, all backgrounds, white collar, blue collar, who are either Catholic or feel drawn to the Catholic faith in some way. You don't have to be Catholic to come to YCP, but you're going to get the Catholic faith when you come to YCP. It's one of the wonderful pieces that drew me into YCP is that you can be brought in by the professional side of it, this desire to grow and establish a career, to meet great people, to meet, frankly, business leaders that I would not be able to come in contact with early in my career like I can through YCP. But at the same time, the faith is infused. So you're getting it bit by bit if you just remain open to it. So young Catholics, let's talk about the faith side of this a little bit. So this group of people, though they often call themselves Catholic, we have learned don't always, in fact, even really know what that means. And frankly, that was my own experience. You're brought up Catholic, you've always been Catholic, right? You've used the word Catholic, but you haven't stopped to say, what does this actually mean to me as an adult? Not just what does it mean to me as a kid with mom telling me that we have to go to Mass on Sunday when I don't want to. They often also don't have the confidence to witness to their faith in the public square. And this is another thing we talk about often at YCP, because we need to first know our faith, But then we also have to be ready to share that faith and to do so boldly. And even more foundationally, these young people, they're not deriving a sense of peace that comes from knowing that they're sons and daughters of God. You also are very aware, I'm sure, in your parishes, young people are hopping between parishes. They don't identify the parish first as a place of community. It's a place that we go to Mass, or a place that I'm going to confession, or a place I'm a part of a young adult group. But that historical sense of the parish as the center of community has frankly largely been lost on my generation and the ones coming behind me. And we can lament that. There are problems with that, for sure. There are ways we can address that as well. But I think that this sense of belonging lies underneath all that. How can we help them see that they belong? Yes, belong to a parish community, but they're also going to belong to other concentric communities that may overlap the parish. So let's shift a little bit to other aspects of our life, having talked about the faith life a little bit. So going back to this American Perspectives study, they say that Americans are now more likely to make friends at work than any other way. More likely to make friends at work than any other way, including at school, in their neighborhood, at their place of worship, or even through existing friends. So young people today see their communities, their primary community, as their workplace now. This is a pretty significant shift, I imagine, than what many of you may have experienced when you were in this demographic. Oftentimes, though, we know that our coworkers are not people of faith, right? So if this is our primary community, but they're not people of faith, then you see where young people today, even if they're raised Catholic, start to get drawn away from the faith. We also know that young people today desire to make a social impact. This is a major driver for their decision making. And you've seen this reflected in how brands are marketing to people today, right? Sustainability, giving back, serving those in need. Any brand today has to be using those words. Whether or not they're following through is a different side of it. But this is a really important facet of life for young people today. They also seek out adventure and newness, but it's not as much about the destination as it is about the journey. They're willing to pay more for experiences versus things now, and the communities they're seeking out reflect this. Think of your cycling gyms. Actually, arcades, believe it or not, are coming back into vogue now, kind of as a retro community that you can be a part of. And this rise of voluntourism. I don't know if you've heard this concept, but young people today want to travel and have an experience that also involves serving, volunteering in another country or something like this. There's a whole industry rising up with this now. It's an important part of how young people see themselves today. So let's look at the need a community piece. And we're going to go through each of these three groups that I would suggest to you are three core pieces of any faith community, at least. First, our experienced guides or mentors. These are the people that teach and show us the way. They encourage us. They give us confirmation we're on the right path. They challenge us. They correct us when we stray or lose focus. And they push us to stretch ourselves. The really cool thing about YCP is that there's an opportunity for all the generations to get involved. We talk about YCP being a bridge across generations. We believe and have seen that young people will be most successful when they have the support, not just from their peers, but also from those who successfully, in their own ways, have gone before them. And YCP integrates the generations in a beautiful way in our ministry by inviting experienced Catholics exactly like you to share their wisdom with us as mentors, speakers, guides, and those who can help give us the next steps that we might reflect on for our lives. Moving on to the peers, right? This is a no-brainer. A community should have people who are like you in some way, who can encourage you, who can share new ideas, who can grow alongside you, who can understand us, who can understand perhaps in some way what we're experiencing. The desire for peer connections goes deeper than just having coworkers. Again, to go back to young people today finding community in work, we need more than just people we can go to happy hour with after work. That's like barely step one, right? At YCP, we remind young people that they're not alone, that there are other faithful young people out there going through the same things they are. We have larger networking events, we have smaller group meetings, we have a variety of different ways that can help them make connections and grow with one another, all sharing this foundation of our desire to grow in our Catholic faith. And lastly, on to the spiritual guides here. Of course, our spiritual shepherds, our priests primarily is what I'm talking about here, but of course, consecrated deacons, others, faith supporters who are going to help guide us on our faith journey. These are the ones who are going to pray for us. Firstly, right? They're going to pray with us. They're going to teach us. They're going to form us, catechize us. Hopefully, they're going to challenge us. They're going to ask us to stay vigilant in our prayer life, to stay close to God through the sacraments. They're going to reinforce that and encourage that for us. So at every YCP chapter, we have at least one priest. It's absolutely important that we have that spiritual guide for the community of volunteers that run the chapter and also the member base who is coming to be fed in both spiritually and professionally through YCP. They incorporate Mass, Eucharistic adoration, and other aspects of the faith into each of our types of events. So in addition to the makeup of a community, we also have to think about what does a community stand for? What is it aimed at? What is it committed to? Right? And I think you could answer that pretty clearly here for your Serran community. You know what you are focused on and you know who you're made up of. At YCP, we're committed to inspiring modern day saints, as Richard mentioned. We do this by building a vibrant community for young workers so they can live their faith and share their faith. And this goal of striving for sainthood ultimately unites our community together through a shared mission. We know we're desiring similar outcomes for our lives, that we're committed to growth and that we can celebrate the joyful times together and also band together during the more difficult times. Just given some time changes, I'm not going to show this video. You're welcome to go to our website and YouTube channel and watch it. But Casey Brown has an amazing story of working in consulting at one of the largest consulting firms in the States here, and just feeling adrift as a Catholic. She felt like she had no idea as a new grad going into the working world, what is my faith to do with all this work that I'm doing with email and spreadsheets and all these meetings, and where is God in all of this? She ended up finding YCP and basically has said that because of YCP, where she originally thought she was going to have to leave that job, that she could not be Catholic and stay in a highly secular, large consulting firm. Through YCP, she learned that there is value to the work that she's doing and the place she has to stay in that environment, because we need Catholics who are bold enough to stay in places where we can share the faith, especially when the faith is being stripped out in many ways. She attributes that learning to the mentors, the peers, and the spiritual guides that she learned about and learned from through YCP. So let's look now at this core concept here, where they belong, right? The final part of this statement that I'm giving you. If I were to guess, if you think back to a moment or a time when you felt you belonged somewhere most, maybe you can recall something. A situation you were in recently, a group of people, perhaps it's your Serra club, perhaps it's your family, perhaps it's other groups you're a part of. There's probably similar arcs to the experience that you had. And I'd actually suggest you maybe think about that a little bit when you're going home, when you're flying home, when you have a few minutes on a break, because this concept is so important. And young people today don't know how to find a place they can belong. And so for you to really understand that, I think will help you engage with them. I want to offer a couple of concepts here that I think roll up into this feeling of belonging. This is not comprehensive, right? You're going to have things to add to your list here. In that community where you belong, you likely were experiencing something similar together. Or you perhaps had in the past experienced something that was meaningful together. You had to have pretty much gone through something together. This is a really core part. We tend to feel a sense of belonging most when we're with those whom we've had a deep shared joy, tragedy, sacrifice, or growth moment with. Number two, you were very likely in person, and this has all become abundantly clear to us in the last couple of years, right? No amount of virtual interactions will ever replace the need for in-person interactions. Touching, even a handshake or hug, actually activates the reward centers in our brain. We are built to be in person with one another. Our brains are wired that way. That's not going to change. We pick up on body language, hidden messages, how people are feeling. We mirror emotions. All of this can often be lost through even the best virtual interactions. Number three, when you think back to that moment where you belonged, I would suggest that it was probably a situation where it mattered to others that you were there. It mattered to others that you were there, meaning if you weren't there, we all want to be missed, right? Isn't there some sense that we hope someone noticed that we weren't able to come to that meeting or be at that dinner or be at that parish event? When people say to you, "I'm so glad you came today. We missed you at Christmas," or "Last night's get-together just wasn't the same without you." That's a moment when we can latch on and we can be like, wow, this is a group that cares about me. This is a place that perhaps I belong. And number four, you may have felt in that moment that your presence was positively impacting those around you. This is an innate desire that we have, this sense of purpose and knowledge that those around us in some way are bettered because we are here. At least we hope so, right? We may not often see that, but I think when you're part of a group like Serra or YCP, you probably have that sense, I'd like to think, a little bit more. We're banding together and doing something good. The collective sum of our passions and prayers and intentions come together to create something larger. So those are kind of the four main areas that I'd say you can work to develop, think about as we look to build these communities of belonging. I want to mention Michael Kelly here. He's a longtime YCP member. He was a volunteer for the Dallas chapter. He's now a speaker for the chapter as he's gone through his career and grown from the early days of YCP a decade ago. He described his life before encountering YCP as going through the motions, not living with purpose or direction. He now says, having been a part of the YCP community for many years, that it's the friendships I've made through YCP that have completely changed my life. It's amazing how these friendships have helped me start making better life decisions. They make me want to be the best possible version of myself day in and day out. Because of them, I know I will never stray too far from my faith, and I will always have the encouragement I need to grow as a disciple for Christ. Now, when Mike came to YCP, he hadn't gone to Mass in over a decade. He had totally left the faith. He described being numb to the world. So we know faith can transform our lives, but he experienced that through people, through a community of belonging, and especially a community of faithful people that wanted to share that faith with him. So as we wrap up here, I'd leave you with a few practical considerations here, what you can actually do today as Serrans. Be proactive and reach out to young people. Invite them to be part of your Catholic network in some way. Invite them to be part of Serra. Invite them to be part of some other project you're working on. Invite them to your parish. There's a deep desire for my generation and the one after me to connect with and learn from you. The problem is we don't have the confidence to approach you. You're often going to have to be the ones to make the first moves. Secondly, share your hard-earned experience. I'll just give you two quick examples. There's a gentleman who's been extremely supportive of YCP. His name is Lee. He's been supportive in multiple ways. He's a retired CEO, very successful professional career, just recently retired. He's mentoring our staff on growth strategies as YCP continues to just blow up from coast to coast. We're talking to him about things like marketing, technology, membership engagement, all of these types of things, how we really build deep communities that also impact the mission that YCP has. So he's investing in our full-time staff who are then investing in these communities across the country. Now, everyone is not called to do that, but in your own way, I imagine you have something that you could give to a young person as a mentor. Some of you likely already are or have. But this is very important, especially as Catholics, that we are learning from those who have gone before us. And that takes you stepping up to be those mentors and those guides for us. Introduce priests to young people. Introduce priests to YCP. It's great for the young professionals, of course. We need holy, dedicated priests that are part of our young professional, young Catholic communities. Also, though, on the flip side, I can tell you the priests that take part in young adult groups like YCP are highly encouraged. They're excited because they see the vitality and the vibrance of the next generation of Catholics that are coming. And I know, at least I think I know, that part of your work is to help priests find community, to help priests feel that they belong and know that they have the support that they need to live out their vocations, their ministerial work. So by coming to YCP, this isn't a peer interaction, I'm calling it, right? That's different. He has brother priests for that. But he can be encouraged and excited and feel that there is hope because there are young people that do embrace their faith. They want to live it out, and they want guidance on how to do that better. And lastly, just keep prioritizing that in-person community. I know, millennials kind of get a bad rep for only wanting to interact on digital channels, right? But I can tell you that social media is not the way people are connecting. The pendulum is swinging the other way. We don't need technology. We don't need digital communities. There is good that comes from those, and there are good ways to use those. But it's when we come face to face with people, peers, mentors, priests, that our life has changed. It's how we share our faith. It's how we live our life in community. So prioritize that. Keep prioritizing that as much as you can. I would just leave you with this last quote from Claire. She's a member in our LA chapter. Claire actually was doing a 2 a.m. search, literally Googling, what is the meaning of life as a 24-year-old, and she stumbled onto YCP's website. These are the things that people are Googling, right? This is crazy stuff. But it's important because these are the questions, the burning questions that young people have today. YCP brought me back to the faith. It's so inspiring and encouraging to see young professionals live out the faith beautifully, fearlessly, and unapologetically. I now have a community to lean on and to share my progress and my struggles with. So the YCP community in her life has taken her from uncertainty, loneliness, restlessness, to a place where she now embraces her faith. She's taken on, frankly, an immense amount of spiritual practices very quickly because she's on fire. She's now doing daily rosary, attends daily mass at least once a week. She's joined a Bible study. She is attending silent retreats. She's a part of YCP. She now serves with her Los Angeles chapter of YCP. Would this have happened if she didn't have a place that she belonged? It may have happened later in life, but she needed this at 24, not at 44 or 64. Through YCP, young people across the country are connected to support one another, encourage one another, challenge one another on this great journey that we're on here in our life. Young Catholics are the future of the church, but they're also needed right now in the present. Anything we can do to connect people, especially young Catholics, has to be encouraged and promoted. We'll regain our peace only when we remember that we are not alone, we are part of a community, we belong to one another, and to a wonderful family of Catholics across the country. So I thank you again for the invitation. Thank you very much.